What's going on, guys? My name is Aaron, and this is the Game Day Hour. Welcome back to another episode, and this is going to be the last episode before the NFL season finally kicks off. We have week one of college football this Saturday, and then next week we have Thursday, Friday, and Sunday and Monday NFL football action for the first time. In today's episode, we are going to be doing two things. This is a two-parter. Part one is going to be predicting the college football playoffs with the new 12-team format. And the second part is going to be predicting every NFL team's record and who I think is going to the playoffs this year. Before we get into each one, I'm kind of going to describe what we're doing in that segment. But without further ado, let's get started. Football is back. By the way, on a side note, my channel passed over 30,000 total views and 75 subscribers. So thank you so much for the success so far this season. It's definitely a step up from last year where I didn't have that much success, but it was still very fun. And I hope this season is much better. There should be no halts. I'm not going to stop midway through the season this time. So we're going to have week-to-week analysts of the NFL season with college football being on shorts and stuff. Yeah, thank you. Now let's get into today's video. Before I give you my predictions on who I think is making the college football playoffs this year, let's explain how the college football playoffs work. Instead of a 4-team format, we have a 12-team format, and we have the top 4 teams, so 1 through 4 are going to get bye weeks to start off the college football playoff tournament, while the other 8 teams have to play against each other in order to play the top teams. The top 4 teams are reserved for the best teams in each Power 4 conference. That's the SEC, that's the ACC, that's the Big 10, and that's the Big 12. And then all the other teams, all the other 8, including one non-Power 5 conference team, that's a team from either the MAC, CUSA, the AAC, the Mountain West, or the Sun Belt. The top team in one of those 5 conferences gets to have the number 12 seed or higher, depending if they are ranked in like the top 10 or at number 11. And then every other team, it's just based on rankings at the end of the year. So you could have multiple SEC, multiple Big 10, maybe even other teams in there. But without further ado, it's time to see who I have going to the college football playoffs. I'm going to go from 12 to 1 and talk about how each team gets their rankings and their seedings. So let's get started. Number 12 team is Boise State, the best of all the non-Power 5 or Power 4, if you want to call it, now that the Pac-12 is basically gone, teams to make it into the playoffs. Boise State is kind of the reason why we had a college football playoff start back in like 2013, 2014. It's because they were a team that often missed out on the college football national championship despite being so good and even had big games against Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, even TCU and others. It's great that they finally get their nod and make it into the playoffs based on my ranking. I don't think they're actually number 12, but I think they'll be the best non-Power 5 school this year, and it's about time that they finally make it in, hopefully. At number 11 seems a little weird, but I have Kansas. I actually have Kansas making the Big 12 championship, but losing to one of the top teams in the top 4. And I think Kansas this year is kind of a sleeper team. A lot of people are looking at teams like Colorado, Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, maybe even Baylor. But I think Kansas is going to be one of the better teams in the Big 12 this year. That's why I have them at number 11. With only one loss, by the way, and that is at the hands of the team that they lose to in their conference championship. Number 10 is Ole Miss. This one's a little bit hard, but I actually have them or LSU. And in their matchup, I have Ole Miss beating LSU, which is why I have them at number 10, but I still have them beneath multiple other SEC schools. So number 10 is where I have them, but they have a lot of high hopes this year, so we'll see how Ole Miss does. And then Ohio State. I know this feels a little weird, but I do not have Ohio State even making the Big Ten championship. I think that they're going to lose 2 games and miss out on the Big Ten championship. I also think that they are going to struggle a little bit this year. I know they have a lot of pieces, but their quarterback is still kind of a question mark and a mystery to me. So I have Ohio State going 10-2 and making number 9. So those are the teams that are going to have to go on the road for the majority of the playoffs. Let's see the teams who get to host the first round. At number 8, I have Texas. Now, Texas has a lot of hype, being the number 4 team so far in the rankings. Texas is interesting because I actually think they're going to make the SEC championship, but lose to who is in the top 4 of the SEC. But if you notice that number 7 is Alabama, here's what I think is going to happen. I think Texas is going to make the SEC championship slightly over Alabama, despite them having the same record at 11-1. But because of Texas's loss, they're going to drop to number 8 just below Alabama, and Alabama will get the number 7 nod. I think that Alabama is going to do pretty well even without Nick Saban, but still not go perfect and not make the SEC championship. So I have them at number 7, but still, they get to host a game in Tuscaloosa. At number 6, I have Penn State. I think Penn State is going to go undefeated until the conference championship game, in which they lose to one of the top 4 teams. And I see them just being at number 6. They still played very, very well, and I think they're going to do well against Ohio State when they face Ohio State, but I don't think they're going to win the conference championship. I think they'll make it there, but not win it. So I have Penn State at number 6, and then number 5 is Notre Dame. Now, despite me thinking Notre Dame is going to go undefeated this year, I still can't put Notre Dame in the top 4 because, again, that's reserved for Power 4 conference championship teams, in which Notre Dame is not in a conference, so they cannot make the top 4. Even if they were to be ranked 1 through 4, they would automatically get the 5th seed. That's how it's going to have to work, and that's where I think they're going to be. Let's reveal the teams who I did have winning their conference championships and getting a bye. At number 4, and I understand why people would be confused, I have Florida State losing 2 games this year but winning the ACC championship. They already lost to Georgia Tech, and I think they'll lose one more time. But it's between them, Clemson, and Miami, and I have Florida State beating both of them, including another matchup between them and Miami in the ACC championship. I don't have Clemson making the ACC championship, but I do have Miami. And because of that, Florida State would be the number 4 seed, the lowest seed, because the other 3 are undefeated. Number 3 is Utah. Yes, I have Utah versus Kansas in the Big 12 championship. I think Utah is, in my opinion, clearly the better Big 12 team. Now that Texas and Oklahoma are gone, Utah is somebody not to mess around with. I think they're going to be great this year and go undefeated, even though they don't really have that tough a competition outside anyone in the Big 12. So I have Utah just getting the nod and beating Kansas in the championship. Number 2, I have Oregon. Surprisingly, not Michigan. I think Oregon is the best team potentially in the Big Ten. I know that sounds weird. Most people would say Ohio State, but I just think that Oregon is going to get slept on so much to the point, and in their head-to-head matchup in Eugene, I think Oregon will beat Ohio State, go undefeated, beat Penn State, and win the Big Ten championship in their first year in the Big Ten. And then number 1 is a no-brainer. It's Georgia. Georgia is like one of the more powerful teams and almost unanimously picked to win the championship this year by a lot of people I've talked to, even ESPN analysts and all that. I think that Georgia is clearly cut to win. They'll beat Texas, they'll beat Alabama, and they'll beat Texas again in the SEC championship. So yeah, based on the alignments, I have Georgia beating Texas in the SEC championship. I have Oregon beating Penn State in the Big Ten championship. I have Utah beating Kansas in the Big 12 championship, and I have Florida State beating Miami in the ACC championship. So those are my 12 teams making the college football playoffs based on the format. And these games start Saturday, with one of the bigger games being Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and then of course Georgia is playing Clemson, who I said would miss out on this. Even Florida State has a tough game against Boston College after their first loss to Georgia Tech. And then of course LSU, USC is also in there, which I have made predictions for, and Miami, Florida, that I've also had predictions for on my shorts, so go check those out. Now let's get on to part 2, the NFL record predictions. I'm not going to go through week by week and who I think each team is going to beat. I'm only going to start doing that when the regular season comes by, and just to be sure that you guys know this, I am not going to be predicting the same team winning each and every single week as I did prior to the season when I came up with these records, because of course in the course of a season you got injuries, you have new momentum, you have teams that are starting to show up, you have teams that are overrated. It might differ, but this is my preseason record predictions. So just so we're sure on that, let's get started. Starting in the AFC North, I have the Ravens being the number 3 seed in the AFC and going 11-6. I have the Bengals being the 5th seed and going 11-6. I have the Browns being the 6th seed making the playoffs and going 10-7. And then Pittsburgh I have as the 11th seed missing the playoffs but with a 9-8 record. So it's pretty simple. Baltimore and Cincinnati are going to be at full force, but I also think they're going to have some growing pains. Cincinnati almost never starts the year off hot. They normally start slow and then work their way up throughout the year, but I think by then it's going to be a little too late. And then Baltimore, I think even with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, they'll have a little bit of growing pains, but they're still going to be very dominant and win the AFC North. Cleveland, I if you get a full year with Deshaun Watson, I don't know what to expect. I still think they're going to be very, very good, still lower than Cincy and Baltimore. And then Pittsburgh just naturally has a winning record, but they're no threat. They're the most mediocre team in the entire NFL, really, because they always have a positive record, but we know they're not Super Bowl threats. And we don't know who's going to be starting the majority of the year between Wilson or Fields. So 9-8 seems like a fair spot to put Pittsburgh, while the other three make the playoffs. The AFC East has the Miami Dolphins going 11-6 as well, and being number 4, winning the AFC East. If the Jets stay healthy, I have them going 10-7, being the last seed in the playoffs at number 7, while Buffalo, who naturally has made the playoffs multiple years in a row, at number 8, 10-7, missing out on the playoffs. Yes, the AFC is going to be that loaded. And then the Patriots under Drake May or Jacoby Brissett throughout the year, and under new head coach Mayo, is going to be number 15, 4-13 record. So the reason why I don't have Buffalo winning the AFC East is simple. They lost a lot this year. Their offense is looking less than stellar outside of Josh Allen and James Cook. And I just see New York and Miami doing a lot better this year. Miami goes 11-6, wins the AFC East, but is also the lower of the seeds, being number 4. While the New York Jets play a little consistent, still struggling because Aaron Rodgers is a lot older, but if he stays healthy, I think they go 10-7 and just secure the last playoff spot. And then for New England, they're still in a rebuild. They still should treat it like a rebuild, but I do have a lot of promise for someone like Drake May, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, AFC East, Miami and New York make it to the playoffs. Buffalo just misses out, and New England gets a high draft pick. As for the AFC South, I have the Texans being the number 2 seed and going 12-5 this year, with Jacksonville and Indianapolis going 9-8 and being 9-10 respectively, missing the playoffs. And then the Tennessee Titans going 6-11 at the number 13 spot. So Houston has made a lot of improvement this year. Getting Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon, you've bolstered that offense up for CJ Stroud. And I think that Stroud is going to make the Texans extremely popular and talented and great this year, and make the number 2 seed, so they'll be able to host at least 2 playoff games if they win their first one. Jacksonville, they've made some improvements as well, and they've secured Trevor Lawrence, but at the same time, I also think that there's going to be some growing pains, some mediocre play for the most part, and I think they'll be the number 9 team in the AFC. And then for Indianapolis, I still think there's some pieces that are needed. The offense is looking better, but still, I feel like it's going to be that kind of even mediocre year for them that they've had for a few years now. And then Tennessee, I mean, I don't know if Will Levis is the answer. I'm confident that he'll do well, but we're just going to have to see. You really don't know with Tennessee. For all I know, they could be a shocker and win the AFC South. Any of these teams are really capable of winning the AFC South. I just see Houston as more of a clear-cut favorite than the other 3. That's what I have. I have Houston making the playoffs, with the other ones not. And then we have the lopsided AFC West. Kansas City is going 13-4, and I have them as the number 1 seed. Once again, the playoffs are going to have to go through Arrowhead. Meanwhile, the Chargers, because they've lost so much on offense in their first year with Jim Harbaugh, are going to be the number 12 team in the AFC, going 7-10. The Raiders don't really have a quarterback. Gardner Minshew is their starter, so despite them having a pretty good defense, I see them going 5-12. As the 14th best team. And then Denver, even though I have a lot of high hopes for Bo Nix, still think this is a rebuild year for them because their offense outside of Nix and maybe Sutton and Devontae, even though that's still not too great in comparison, will not do very well and be number 16, the worst team in the AFC this year. I mean, it's clear that Kansas City is probably going to win the division, no doubt, because of how much each other team has lost or not gained. And I don't think the Chargers, they don't look that great. They don't have a great wide receiver core. It's still very, very young. I know there's some talent coming up like Ladd McConkey, but they are kind of like the Buffalo Bills right now. Great quarterback, good running game, poor wide receiver play. That's what their offense looks like. And I know it's still building pieces, and they'll still do very well under Justin Herbert. And then, of course, the Raiders and the Broncos, they have some ways to go. Yeah, I think even the Raiders are looking for a quarterback in the next draft, so who knows. But yeah, give me the Chiefs, which means that the AFC altogether would have Kansas City, Houston, Baltimore, Miami, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and New York making the playoffs this year. With all that said, let's get to the NFC. The NFC North, I have Green Bay being the third best team in the NFC, with the Detroit Lions, who were number 3 last year in the NFC, being number 5 at the same record of 11-6. I have the Vikings and the Bears equally going 7-10, being a number 11 and number 12 respectfully. So I'm very excited to see Green Bay this year. I mean, the way they ended off last year, making it to the NFC divisional round, they first stomped on the Cowboys and then played a super competitive game against the Niners, who would later go to the Super Bowl. There's a lot of high hopes for Green Bay. Bringing in Josh Jacobs helps balance that offense out. And I think that Jordan Love is going to have a pretty successful year, even probably a standout year with him and CJ Stroud being surprises this year. As for Detroit, I think they're going to go 11-6 alongside Green Bay, but I also think they're going to struggle just a little bit trying to repeat that same energy that they had last year. But they're still going to make the playoffs at 11-6. I have no doubt about that. I think that they're almost locked to make the playoffs this year, assuming they stay healthy. And then for Minnesota, you don't have a quarterback. Sam Darnold's out, and Sam Darnold is your quarterback while JJ McCarthy is out. So I don't know how effective that offense is going to be. And then for Chicago, I know the hype of Caleb Williams, but I'm not giving Chicago a playoff spot just yet. They still have a lot of things to work out, and they've gone 3 and out many times. So I don't know how effective their offense is going to be. But yeah, give me the Packers, give me the Lions to make the playoffs in the AFC North. The other two, down years. In the NFC East, I have Philadelphia being the second best team going 11-6 as well, with Dallas also going 11-6 as the number 6 team in the NFC. Washington is going to go 8-9 and miss the playoffs as the number 9 team. And then the Giants, I suspect, is going to be the worst team in the NFL this year. Despite having the same record as other teams, they'll be last in the NFC altogether and the first overall pick come next year. With Philadelphia, they made a lot of moves during the offseason. You got Saquon Barkley, you just recently got Jahan Dotson, and that offense looks amazing. And they also did very well in the draft, really making their secondary look a lot better with these young guys up front. Philadelphia is probably the better team, like a top 5 team in the NFL right now. The Cowboys did absolutely nothing in the offseason that moves me at all, but they're still going to be pretty successful because they have been that way for the last 3 years. As long as Dak Prescott stays healthy, you finally sign him, CeeDee Lamb, or Michael Parsons, or at least get them to play in this next season. I think they'll still be successful, but tying with Philadelphia and losing their last matchup with Philadelphia will put Philadelphia over them. So the Cowboys will be number 6 under Detroit. Washington is going to look incredible. You're going to see flashes. I think that Jaden Daniels is in a pretty good situation, and as long as he doesn't get injured, I think that Washington has a spark, and they've been making pretty good moves, but they'll still go 8-9, and they'll be very, very close though. And then the Giants, you could just tell from the front office that the New York Giants do not look like a team that's going to be successful this year. Losing Saquon Barkley hurts. Daniel Jones clearly is not the guy, but they're going to stick with him. So I have to imagine that this is going to be an issue, and the Giants will not be successful this year, going 3-14. So in review, Philly and Dallas again in the playoffs. Washington close, you'll see some sparks, and then New York, don't even think about it. The NFC South again is the lower of all the conferences, not being that great, but like normal, we have the Buccaneers making the playoffs again as the winner of the NFC South at 9-8. I think Baker Mayfield's going to have a pretty good year, but it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are kind of mediocre at this point since Tom Brady has left. But Atlanta is going to go 9-8 and make the 7th seed, making the playoffs as well, which is kind of surprising seeing how Tampa Bay is going to win the division with a 9-8 record as well. The Saints are going 6-11. I think they're pretty mediocre, and Derek Carr, I think he's just not it for New Orleans, even though they have a lot of great pieces. I don't expect anything from them, and they also have a tough schedule. And then Carolina have the same type of record as New York, but you'll see a little bit of improvement, hopefully, from Bryce Young. They'll definitely be better than New York, though, so I have no problem with that. But Carolina will still be number 15, and they're still rebuilding, so give them some time. But yeah, again, nothing to expect from this conference at all, but Tampa Bay and Atlanta making it to the playoffs as the lower seeds of each, both the winner of each division and the wild card. So it's not much stock to put here. And then lastly, the lopsided, once again, kinda, the NFC West. San Francisco I have going 14-3. Even if you lose Brandon Ayuk, this offense, this team is just too powerful. Their defense is amazing. I don't see much competition with anybody this year with San Francisco. 14-3 makes a lot of sense. With the Rams, I have them going 9-8, but I have Atlanta over them, and I think they miss out on the playoffs. They still have a lot to look forward to this year. I mean, they have so much talent on offense, so there's a chance that they could make the playoffs. They have a really good shot, but I just don't have them making it in this prediction. And then with Seattle, I have them going 8-9. I don't think Geno Smith is going to be the answer. I think he'll be pretty good, but I don't think he'll be the full answer. So they'll be number 10. And then Arizona, slightly better, 5-12, but not much to expect from them. But I do think Marvin Harrison is going to be a flashpoint for them. So that's something to look forward to. But yeah, San Francisco is the only team, and they are the top team in this conference, in this division. But despite all of this, the Niners not only are going to win this division, but also win the NFC. So that's that to look forward to. Which in conclusion means that the Niners will hold the number 1 spot. The Eagles will be number 2. The Packers will be number 3. The Buccaneers will be number 4. The Lions will be 5. The Cowboys will be 6. And the Falcons will be 7, with LA just missing out. With all that said, those are my record predictions and who I think is going to be making the playoffs this year. There's only one thing left to look forward to, and that is this season. Week by week, you will be seeing episodes come out as I predict who I think is going to win each matchup on Sunday, while also showing you my fantasy team and my opponents week by week. So you'll keep that coverage throughout the entire NFL season, with shorts being basically college football central, while also reviewing some records, how I did in fantasy football, and then when the time comes, Major League Baseball playoffs, and also the NBA season starting. So with that said, we have ourselves a set to look forward to. And this is the last of the preseason. Let's finally get into the season. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and if you do, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. Football is finally back, and I'm excited to rock and roll this year. Again, thank you for all the support, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, as I tend to make videos each and every week while also having shorts prepared for the entirety of a week prior to each episode. With that said, I hope you guys have a great day, take care, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.